Welcome back, everybody. This Week in America online, thisweekinamerica.us. Poems for All Occasions by Linda Mangram is a wonderful collection of poems grounded in faith. All are written in rhyming couplets and are of various lengths. In the words of one review, the reader is in for a real treat. The poems fall into three categories: inspirational or encouragement. On the lighter side, and family and friends. Every poem has an illustration and the date and a sentence to say why it was written. Perfect for personal reflection or for use in life groups to reflect and discuss. You will find one for any occasion. Linda has loved to read as far back as she can remember. One of her earliest memories going to the public library with her mother, visiting the children's room, and taking home as many books as they would allow. She now lives in Opelika, Alabama, with her husband Craig and dog. Linda Mangram, author of Poems for All Occasions, joining us on This Week in America. Hi, Linda. Welcome to the program. Great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Rick. It is so good to be here.
It is such an inspirational book, Poems for All Occasions, and a laugh along the way as well. I mentioned, in fact, you've got the great title, For All Occasions. There's really something in there for everyone, for every occasion, isn't there?
Yes, it is. It was amazing when I first started writing this book. It was like I jumped from one to the other. One would be inspirational, another one would be funny, something else would be about my family. And when I sent it to the publisher in that form, she immediately sent it back and said she couldn't do it that way. She had to have it categorized into chapters. So I sat down and I put them in piles. You go here, you go there, you go there. When I got through, I had 3 piles. That's what they were.
And it makes it really nice because you can sit and read it, and you can go back if you're looking for some inspiration, if you're looking for a laugh during the day, maybe things are not going well, you can go and you can find them in the book. That's what's so nice. The book is sort of a resource as well as something that you will read for entertainment, for enjoyment. Talk about, I mentioned reading started at an early age for you. When did you start writing poetry?
This is the first poetry that I have ever written.
You're kidding.
No, I have never even thought about writing poetry. The very first poem that I wrote was in answer to a direct prayer. And I believe prayers are answered, and this one was answered, and it came to me in those words, in that form, which just happened to be in rhyming sentences in poetry.
It's interesting, the book broken down, as I said, in 3 categories. In inspirational, the words of comfort. And again, you give us a sentence after the poem, a date when you wrote the poem and why. This was in July 17th of 2017. Wrote for Angie, your oldest niece, along with a message. And the message was basically you prayed, you didn't have the words to comfort her, and he put these words in your heart. Talk about that experience, because it's almost like you had help in writing this, didn't you?
That is exactly how it happened. My niece was going through a hard time, and it's something that I had never personally been through, so I couldn't really relate to it as well as I could relate to something that I had experienced personally. And I prayed about it, and I just said, Lord, I don't have the words to comfort this person that I love so much that's hurting. And that was it. It was just a very simple prayer. It wasn't anything eloquent. The next day, my husband and I were sitting down in the back of our property in what we call Sycamore Park, which is also another poem in that book. And we were sitting in the gazebo, and we were talking nothing about poems, nothing about my niece, just everyday stuff. And these words just came into my head. And I told Craig, you're going to have to excuse me. I've got to go back to the house and find me a pencil and a piece of paper. And they just came, and I just wrote them down. And as usually happens when God answers a prayer, he doesn't answer it in just a little trickle. He answers it in a flood. And that's exactly what happened with the rest of these poems. If you'll notice the dates, I didn't write just one poem on one date. A lot of these poems were all written on the same date.
I did notice that.
Yeah.
As I was reading, I thought, okay, this is probably maybe over a period of 3, 4, 5 years where you had compiled these and then decide to put them into a book. And I was amazed at that because, yes, many were on the same day. They were all within a very tight period there. So once this process started, you really couldn't turn it off at that time, could you?
That's exactly right. It took about 4 months, and all it took was somebody to say something that triggered something in my mind about a specific subject, and I'd be off and running with writing a poem. And sometimes I would write them, and I would look back, and I would think, wow, where did that come from? But then I knew where they came from.
Yes, the book is called Poems for All Occasions. Linda Mangram, Mangram, is our guest on This Week in America. The book's available, of course, at Amazon, wherever books are sold. You can find it as well at bookventure.com in their bookstore, and you can link on directly to Bookventure by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and get information on Linda's book. The poem that we were talking about, Words of Comfort, just several lines from there. For love and joy and peace and grace, for all the sorrows you must face, take my hand and let me lead. I know the healing you will need. Just part of this powerful message that came to you, and that has to be such a gift to be able to write this and share this with someone. It may be difficult to express those same thoughts, in sentences, but to put them in poetry form, they're very impactful, aren't they?
I think so. I think they are indeed, and this is not just my work. This is something that I was blessed with an answer to a prayer, and this is the answer. And so I was just blessed to be able to put it all down on paper.
So many of these are inspirational. This is one of the poems I loved, and many of them. Think before you speak. Be careful of the words you speak. Engage your mind and let it seek. Let your words run through your head. You can't take it back once it's said. Now, you wrote that early August 1st of 17, and you talk about the Bible saying the tongue is hard to control, and boy, it's right. We've all had that. These are words to live by. Think before you speak. We've all had situations like that, haven't we?
I think everybody can relate to that. That started with a conversation with my cousin, and I said something very negative, and she did this little hand signal like wiping it out, and she said, don't say those words, they're negative. You put them out there, you can't take them back. Well, that's all it took. And then I was off and running with this poem, and it's so true, because we may forget what we say, but if it's hurtful, the person that it's pointed toward, they don't forget, and you can't take it back.
Well, and that falls into the category, and later in the book you've got a poem, Let Go of the Hate, that when you do something, it may seem somewhat trivial to you at the time, and you go on and go on with life, but to the person that's on the receiving end of that, it stays with them. Talk about that. That happened a long time ago. You say you wrote this again on August 1st of 17, and then you say you never will forget how good it feels to actually forgive. So you can be in a hateful situation, but once you let go of that, suddenly you feel a lot better, don't you?
Yes, you do, and that is quite a story, and it's one that I really don't dwell on a lot because it does have a lot of hurtful things in it. But someone very close to me had done something that had hurt me really bad, and being a Christian, I knew that it was wrong to have that much hate in my heart, but you can't always control that. And I had prayed, Lord, please just take this away, just let it go. And through a process of events, he did exactly that. And it actually took a pretty profound thing, in fact, a boat wreck that put me in the hospital with a broken back before I could realize that's what it took to just knock the hate away. And after that, I never felt that hate again. I even apologized to the person that hate had been directed toward.
And when you read the full poem, Let Go of the Hate, it brings all of that into focus and how good it is to actually forgive, let go of that, and move on. The book is Poems for All Occasions. Linda Mangram, our guest of the program. You'll find information and order the book at bookventure.com/bookstore. You can go directly there by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. it gives you this opportunity through your poetry to messages like your niece that you were talking to in the first poem we discussed, your family as well. I know your son Michael, you've got a poem in there, Still Small Voice, that you wrote in August of 2017, addressing that sometimes he said he couldn't hear God's voice anymore, and you address that in a poem. This gives you a chance to sort of, in a different way, talk to family and friends, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I think we all have times in our life that we think that we can't hear God, but I think it's mostly because we're not listening to the small voice. And I know a lot of times personally, when I pray for something, I'm so busy trying to figure out my own answer, I don't hear what God's saying.
Exactly. You're sort of waiting and sort of forcing something. And in fact, you address that in another poem as well, God's Answers, that you wrote the end of July of 2017. Again, I point those dates out because they are all within that compressed period there, where you talk about you can't count the times you thought prayers not answered, only to realize later the answer was there, and oftentimes even better than what you had asked for.
That is exactly right. If you'll look, or if you're looking at that book, you'll see a little blonde-headed girl in a car seat. That little girl is what sparked this prayer. Her name is Emily, and she has a brain tumor. And no child has ever survived this brain tumor. They don't usually live more than, say, 24 months after it's discovered. And she has so many people praying for her that the tumor will just disappear. Well, it hasn't done that. And the only thing I can figure is that God has another answer that's greater, and he's just waiting a little later to reveal it.
The book is called Poems for All Occasions. Linda Mangram, our guest on the program. In the category, the section on the lighter side, I love this one. You have a prayer of frustration. Boy, this is something we can all relate to. Tell me about the background on that, because, yeah, we've all gone through this, and you said it so eloquently, but it's something we've all experienced.
I think that is pretty self-explanatory. I had been through a day when I had spent most of the day on the telephone with a technical support person.
Yep.
And trying to get the information that I wanted it was so frustrating. And I sat down and I read this, and I thought anybody that is alive and breathing can relate to this poem.
Yes, it's a prayer for frustration. You say one of the lines, and when you wait 2 hours for help, do you really expect me not to yelp? That sort of sums it up there. And that, in fact, you could have written the poem and many more probably in the time that you were on hold in dealing with the tech support person. What are future plans? You can touch and have touched so many people with what you've done in Poems for All Occasions, and you do them so well. Are you still writing, saving poetry, and planning on doing more?
I am. In fact, I have written 2 more, and I hope to get them published. They're not published at this time, but the one that I wrote after this one is entitled Cancer Cannot Win. And it doesn't have a light part like this one does. It's very serious because cancer is a serious subject, and it's something that I have been through twice in my life, as well as other members of my family. And I really hope that I can get that one published, because I think it would say a lot to people that are going through that disease, to let them know, hey, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one to feel this way. I'm not the only one to blame God for this. I really hope I can get that one out there. It's written in the same format, but it's more like a story written in the form of poetry than it is in poem, because it's a running chapter after chapter. They just kind of relate to each other as they go.
There is so much comfort in your poems, and as we all deal with grief, we do all feel loss in our families, and it really helps you sort of formulate your opinions by putting them in the poetry, reading the poetry that Linda has put together. Some of the poems, The Joy of a Son, a granddaughter arrives, a grandson growing up. What has this meant for you and family, and being able to put all that in perspective and sort of reach your family members in a unique way as well?
Well, all I can say is any grandmother worth her salt that can write a book and not put her grandchildren in it, I don't know what to think about them. But it was a joy to sit down and write both of those poems. I have a lovely granddaughter and a lovely grandson, and I've watched them grow. I've watched the things that they have experienced, like most grandchildren and children go through, and it was just a joy to sit down and do those.
What has this experience been like for you? And as a listener can find out, and certainly after you read the book, Poems for All Occasions, you do a lot of personal situations in your life, very relatable to all of us because many of us go through similar situations. But to be able to go back, write it, look at it from a different perspective, put it in this form, this unique form, and then touch other people with it. Has this been almost therapeutic for you in writing this book?
Some of these poems have been very therapeutic for me. In fact, there was one or two that I actually didn't want to write, and I couldn't get them off my mind and out of my heart. And I thought, well, God just means for me to write them. And I literally would say the prayer, God, if you want me to write about this, you're going to have to give me the words because I don't have any words to say this. And there were several in there like that. But when I finished writing them, you're right, it was very therapeutic to do that.
You know, it's interesting. Most of us struggle to formulate intelligent sentences in trying to express our feelings. You're able to put this in the poetry form, and when I talk to you, I find that these sort of just flow from you. This really is a gift, isn't it? Poetry has always scared me in trying to write it for that very reason. You've got your thoughts, now you have to make everything sort of rhyme and a flow to it. And for you, it seems like you're having a little help along the way.
I have a lot of help along the way. And when these thoughts come through, they come through in the form of poetry. So it's not at all hard to take a thought and put it into poetry when it's already in that form when it comes through your mind. And these were.
And this is a real gift. I mentioned in the beginning, so many people will take the book and read it themselves. They will get together with others and discuss it. It really, really is an excellent book. It's Poems for All Occasions. Linda Mangram, that's M-A-N-G-R-A-M, is the author. The book is available at bookventure.com, Amazon as well, and you can go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly to get information on Linda's book. Linda, it was a real pleasure having a chance to read the book. There are poems there that will touch all people, serious, inspirational programs, poems, as well as those that will lighten the day, like a prayer of frustration that we all can relate to and chuckle as we're reading that one. Congratulations on the new book. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you, Rick. I have enjoyed it, and I appreciate you having me.
Well, excellent job with the book. You're a very talented writer. Poems for All Occasions. Linda Mangram, our guest on This Week in America. You'll find information at bookventure.com. And, of course, you can link on directly by going to our website, thisweekinamerica.us. And we're back on today's program after these messages.